Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the first of 3 school recycling roundtables with the Westchester County Department of Environmental Facilities, or DEF. My name is Ron Schulhoff. For those that I don't know, I'm a Scarsdale resident. As a volunteer, have worked on many recycling initiatives around Westchester. Ann Jaffe Holmes sends her regrets that she couldn't be here to moderate. She had a family commitment, but she wanted to send her thanks to everybody that's here for all the great questions that you sent in, and her thanks to the DEF for being here in Suburban. Of course, thank you to the town of Mamaroneck and Supervisor Nancy Seligson and Sue Odierna from her office. Thank you to Karen Kaur, Ann Jaffe Holmes, and Monica Granholm from FCWC for organizing these roundtables. A brief thank you to all the sponsors and people who helped make this event happen: We Future Cycle, T-Town, Greenberg Nature Center, Westchester Zero Waste, which is a program of Sustainable Westchester, and of course FCWC, and Lou Vitrone and everybody from the DEF. We see a lot of people from a lot of different schools. It's going to be a fantastic discussion. A lot of people sent in some great questions. There'll be time for plenty of questions as well from the audience today. And the focus is, of course, recycling in the schools. There's a lot of different recycling out there. Today's focus is really going to be on what people call curbside recycling or traditional recycling. So paper and cardboard and commingled, that's your plastic, glass, metal, and cartons. That's going to be the real focus today to answer a lot of questions that have either always been there or that have come up with a lot of the news about recycling lately, and a lot of questions that come up from students in the schools. We'll hear about how Westchester is managing these markets, what you can do in your schools to help, and the DEF and Suburban is here to answer any of your questions. The structure of today will be a brief presentation by Lou, followed by Q&A, and that's really the purpose of being here today. So please think about questions that you may have. We want to get everyone's questions answered, so we'll try to ask everyone to be concise and keep it to single-part questions just so we can give everybody a chance and then keep coming around. As a reminder, this event is being filmed and will be available for anyone who would like to watch at home at LMC-TV.org. And I'd just like to introduce our panelists now. Lou Vitrone, the Deputy Commissioner of the Department of Environmental Facilities, or DEF, for Westchester County. Mario Parisi, Assistant Commissioner of DEF. Melissa Rotini, Director of Environmental Operations at the DEF. Chris Oxer of City Carting of Westchester. And Diane Chickering, the Recycling Coordinator of Suburban Carting. And I'll hand it over to Lou now.
All right, good morning, everyone. Is this on? Okay. So, thank you, Ron. This is really all about you guys and questions. I know you were asked to bring your questions, and we're going to try to do our best to answer all your questions about recycling in the schools. But we thought maybe it would be best to start out with a little bit of background, let you know how Westchester County handles its waste and recycling, and a little bit about recycling markets in general, because over the past almost 2 years, the recycling markets have changed dramatically, and recycling has changed a lot in the past 2 years. So we're going to talk about where we are now, how we got here, and then, like I said, it's all about you, your questions. We're going to try to answer them. The ones we can't answer, we'll get back to you on. But also, I know we're filming this, and there's actually a PowerPoint presentation going on in the back. I don't know if that's going to be caught on film, but we'll make that available to anybody who wants it. I guess on the Federated Conservationist website, we can post that up there, so all of you will be able to have access to it. But so let's get started. Okay, so DEF, Environmental Facilities, county department that several of us are a part of. We manage the county's refuse disposal district. And Refuse Disposal District number 1 was created by New York state law in the 1980s to handle the county's recycling and garbage disposal. If you look at that map of Westchester County, the refuse district makes up about 60% of the county geographically, but it's actually over 90% of the county population. The seven municipalities in the Northeast that do not belong to the district, they're a little less populated, more sparsely populated, so about 90% of the county lives within the refuse district. And all of the district's solid waste, so all of the district's garbage that you leave curbside goes to a waste-to-energy facility. It's a Charles Point Waste-to-Energy Facility. It's also known as RESCO. It's located in Peekskill, New York. And it's used as a feedstock. The garbage is used as a feedstock at Resco in a clean burn process to produce electricity. It's enough power, it's enough electricity to power about 67,000 homes. Now, about 90% of all of Westchester's waste, that's for within the district, outside of the district, residential, commercial, about 90% of all of Westchester's waste goes to a waste-to-energy facility, does not go to a landfill. That's compared to only about 12.8% of the country's waste goes to a waste-to-energy facility. So most of the United States, their garbage goes to a landfill. Westchester, that's not the case. Now, just getting back to the district, I know there's several schools here that are outside of the district. So DEF is not just, we not only manage the district, but we're the solid waste planning unit for all of Westchester County. So the county solid waste management plan that we implement, it pertains to all of the counties. So all of you are included in that solid waste management plan as well. But your waste is handled differently. So when we have questions later, you know, it would be great if you identify what school district you're with, and then we'll be able to answer it better if we know if you're in the district or outside of the district. So all of the waste, or the vast majority of Westchester's waste, is going to a waste-to-energy facility. Now, all of the district's recycling is processed at the MRF, the Material Recovery Facility, and that's located in Yonkers. Excuse me. That is the facility, if you're ever at Stu Leonard's, it's that plant on the other side of the thruway. All of the recycling is processed there, and then it's marketed and sold to recyclers. Okay, so the district offers a myriad of other recycling programs. Many of them are offered to out-of-district residents as well. Sometimes there might be a reimbursement fee for out-of-district residents, but we operate a household material recovery facility in HMRF. That's in Valhalla on the Grasslands campus, and you can bring virtually anything that is not accepted curbside can be brought to the HMRF. So that's household cleaning supplies, fertilizers, pesticides, e-waste, electronic waste, tires, Freon-containing appliances, mercury-containing devices, virtually anything that is not accepted curbside. Medications, there's document shredding services, all of that can be taken to the HMRF. We also have we have a fleet of 3 mobile shredder trucks. They go out every weekend and during the week. On the weekends, they go out and do residential shredding events where residents can bring documents, up to 4 boxes of documents for shredding. And they also, during the week, they go to municipal buildings like this one we're in right now, or to schools, and and through a shared services program, they shred the material. We keep the material and we sell it to recyclers. We have a medication take-back program. I mentioned you could take unused or expired medications to the HMRF. We also have 38 lock boxes set up in police departments throughout Westchester County. Any resident in the county is within 5 miles, I believe, of a box where they can drop off medication 24/7 at a police department. Also, we have 27 e-waste drop-off pods throughout the county where residents can drop off electronic waste. We collect about 3 million pounds of electronic waste every year in Westchester County. So think about that. That's second only to New York City in all of the state. 3 million pounds of e-waste. And we recycle as much of that as we can. There's precious metals in a lot of e-waste. A lot of it is hazardous waste, so it has to be handled properly. But whatever we can recycle, we do. The e-waste, last year I think we collected over 8,000 pounds of medicine. That's not the bottles, that's just the pills. So 8,000 pounds of medication. We have a boat wrap recycling program. So boat wrap is the plastic wrap that goes over boats to protect them from the elements in the off-season. We have a collection pod set up in Mamaroneck. We have them set up all along the Long Island Sound and also on the Hudson River. There's over 20 locations where we collect boat wrap. We have an organic waste disposal program. There are 22 locations where municipalities, including Mamaroneck, bring their yard waste, their organic yard waste. So now we're not talking about food waste. We're only talking about leaves, grass clippings, brush, small branches. We collect about 140,000 tons of organic waste. Unfortunately, we don't have sites set up in Westchester to handle that waste, so we do have to ship it upstate, but it goes to compost facilities in upstate New York and a couple in Connecticut. We provide tours of the MRF for school kids from kindergarten up to graduate programs, and scout troops and others who want to tour the facility. We have a recycling helpline that is available 24/7 with to answer recycling questions, and we have a recycling enforcement program. We're one of, again, other than New York City, one of very few municipalities in the region that have a dedicated enforcement program. So we have inspectors that go out to ensure that waste generators are following the source separation law in the county. So how are we doing? Westchester County does very well. I'm happy to tell you that we have one of the highest recycling rates in New York State, in the whole Northeast. We have a 52% recycling rate last year. And just to compare, to give you some frame of reference, the United States, the country's recycling rate is 35%. So we're doing a lot better than the rest of the country. But now let's start talking a little more about schools specifically. So we touched on this a little bit. Some schools are going to be serviced by their municipality. Their municipal sanitation department is going to collect their garbage and their curbside recycling. Others are going to be serviced by private haulers, and we have a couple of representatives from private haulers up here on the panel. And that's important for a couple of reasons. The municipal haulers, if they're in the district, are going to be following different rules, a little bit different. As Nancy Seligson said earlier, recycling's the law, so everybody has to follow that. But there are some nuances that are different between a hauler, a private hauler, and a municipal hauler. And the biggest difference is dual stream versus single stream recycling. So the refuse district, all residents in the refuse district, by law, follow dual stream recycling. Anybody collected by a municipal hauler in the district is also following dual stream recycling. Dual stream means your pulp recyclables, that's your paper and your cardboard, are kept in a separate waste stream. They're put in a separate bin. Your commingled recycling, as Ron said earlier, your glass, your plastic, your metals, predominantly food and beverage containers, but it might be other items, those are also kept in a separate stream, and then your garbage is kept in a separate stream. So your recycling is dual. Single stream, obviously, everything's going in the same container. Not the garbage is separate, but single stream means all your recycling, your pulp, your paper and cardboard, and your commingled, your glass, plastic, and metal, is all going in the same container. And we're going to talk about that in a little while in more detail. So I said earlier, recycling's changed a lot in the past 2 years, and let's talk about why that is so. China was the big driver of the recycling market for many years. China bought most of the world's recycling for years. In late 2017, as part of China's national sword policy, they decided they didn't want to do this anymore. They have enough people creating enough waste to try to develop their own recycling markets. They don't need to go out and import garbage. They decided let's try to develop our own recycling markets. So they put bans on the import of certain recyclables, and they put contamination limits on other recycling that is so stringent that it in essence operates as a ban. They're very, very hard to meet the limits that they put on these items. So other countries, predominantly in Asia, tried to fill that void when China pulled out of the market. Vietnam, Thailand, they all started to import a lot more material to try to fill that void. Their infrastructure was overwhelmed, and they also decided they did not want to be the world's dumping ground. So they also started to put in place restrictions and bans. And you know, the China issue also goes to the trade war that's going on between the United States and China. That plays into it as well. But China's announced that by 2020, they're out of the recycling market completely. They're not going to import any more material. And that's had a profound effect on recycling throughout throughout not only the United States, but throughout the world. It's restricted the market. The market is much smaller now. And because of that, recycling is a commodity. It's financially driven. So now that the market is in a deep, deep recession, it's really changed the way we have to think about how we recycle. Of course, the first option is always to generate less waste, right? So that is using water bottles instead of buying, using reusable water bottles, using reusable lunch packets, things like that. Obviously, generating less waste is always the goal, right? Zero waste is really the goal. But we still produce a lot of waste in the county, and we still need to get rid of it. But we're doing very well at that in Westchester, generating less waste. And since 2003, we've reduced the amount of residentially generated garbage in the county by almost 26%. That's a drastic reduction. It's 127,000 tons of less waste being generated in Westchester residentially. And if you think for a second that it costs us over $90 a ton to get rid of garbage, it's a huge savings as well. That's what we're talking about. That's the reduction in waste. But as I said, even though we've reduced waste by so much, we're still producing over 350,000 tons of garbage that we need to get rid of. And we're processing over 70,000 tons of recycling at the MRF that we talked about earlier. So because the market's restricted so much, most people are trying to sell their products, their recycling. Most MRFs, both private and municipal, are trying as hard as they can to sell their material domestically. But the buyers that are in the market now, it's a buyer's market. They run the market, and we have to have the cleanest product available to be able to continue to move our material. Now, up till now, Westchester has been able to recycle everything left at the curb. That's a lot different than what's going on throughout the country. You may have read there are recycling programs being suspended all over. I think 200 major cities, I think I read recently, have suspended their recycling programs. We have not done that. We are recycling everything left at the curb. It's a challenge. Chris Oxer, he's here on the panel, he markets a lot of our material. He can tell you what a challenge it is to sell some of the lesser valued materials, but we're continuing to do it. But to continue to do that, we have to offer the best product. And until now, we've been able to do it for several reasons. We have a valuable commodity when we sell our recycling because it's so clean. And it's so clean for several reasons. I go back to the dual stream versus single stream. Dual stream is always cleaner than single stream material. That's for a couple of reasons. When you throw everything into the same container in single stream, the glass breaks. It breaks in all recycling. It breaks when it's just commingled, but it breaks when it's in single stream. So those little glass pellets and shards, they get embedded in the cardboard and in the newspaper, and they drastically reduce the value of the paper and the cardboard. Also, as much as we rinse out and dry out our recycling and our commingled bottles and cans, a lot of them still have residual liquid in them. So that also contaminates the rest of the recycling in the single stream. So dual stream offers a cleaner product, and we've stayed dual stream. We also, about 6 years ago, 6 or 7 years ago, we retrofitted our MRF with state-of-the-art automated equipment. We have optical sorters that separate out our plastics into different categories. We have screeners that separate out cardboard and newspaper. So that also helps us to offer a much cleaner product. Third reason, all of you, Westchester residents are very well educated on recycling. They do a very good job cleaning and separating out their material. We've got to do a better job, and we're going to talk about that, and it's especially a challenge in schools, I know that. So we're going to talk about how to get that product even cleaner. But the fourth reason that we've been able to continue to sell our recycling, I believe, is our recycling enforcement program. So residentially, we train municipal sanitation departments to leave behind any waste that's improperly separated and leave it behind with an oops sticker. The oops sticker goes right on the bag and just explains why your garbage or recycling was left behind, that you didn't properly separate it. But non-residential garbage, so businesses, restaurants, catering halls, schools, colleges, hospitals, our inspectors go out and they inspect the loads and the containers behind these establishments and make sure that they're recycling properly. They also make sure that haulers are collecting the material separately and handling it properly. And they follow garbage trucks during the day to make sure they're collecting it properly. And when they're not doing it properly, we issue violations and we issue fines. So for those reasons, we've been able to continue to market and sell our recycling. So let's get back to schools again. Can we go back to the last one? So for one thing, in public areas, studies have shown that little things can make a huge difference. For instance, item-specific receptacles. Most schools I go to now, they have these. Not all of them, though. You'd be surprised. So when you have item-specific containers, and by item-specific, I mean for the commingled, it's just a circle for the bottles to go into. For paper, it's just a slit for the paper to go into. And studies have shown that when you have those type of containers, the product is a lot cleaner and people recycle more properly. Is that right, more properly? Then also studies have shown that if you have garbage and recycling together, don't have recycling containers on one side of the hall and garbage containers on the other side of the hall. Studies have shown when they're all together, people recycle better. Now, in a couple of minutes, we're going to just open this up for all your questions. And most of you are probably doing these things I'm going to talk about now. But just some ideas, school recycling, that we've gathered from talking to administrators at schools. On the administrative side, probably the most important thing is making sure there's communication between your custodial staff and your hauler. And we were talking about this earlier, private haulers versus municipal haulers. So let me use milk cartons as an example. Westchester County, in our refuse district, we recycle cartons. That's juice, gable top, aseptic containers, milk cartons. That's all acceptable in Westchester. But we do it differently than most of the country. In most of the United States, when there's a carton recycling program, you put your carton in with your commingled containers. I'm sorry, you put them in with your paper containers in most of the country. In Westchester, we put them in with our commingled containers. We do that to keep the product cleaner. We don't want the residual liquid in the cartons contaminating our paper and cardboard, so we put it in and we hand sort it. We actually have people on the line who pull out cartons, and that's how we recycle it. We do it a little different in Westchester. But I'm using milk cartons as an example because I don't know about suburban, but a lot of private haulers do not accept cartons in recycling at all. And this becomes really confusing for kids. And I'll use Mamaroneck as an example because some of the schools in Mamaroneck are serviced by a private hauler. Some of them are serviced by the municipality. A child might go from one school to another and the rules change. So it's very important to keep communication open between the custodial staff and the hauler so they know what needs to go into that container. This is the whole point of, did we pass the recycle right? So that's okay. So this is the whole point of recycling right. We've transitioned in Westchester from recycling more to recycling right. If we were doing this presentation 3 years ago, I would tell you, when in doubt, throw it in the recycling container. You know, we have certain amount of contamination built in, and when we sell it, they're going to have to take our material. It was a seller's market. We had the cleanest material, and we were pretty pompous about it, so we said, just throw everything in the recycling container. They'll have to work it out. I'm here to tell you that is not the case anymore. We've changed over from recycling more to recycling right. Recycling right means two things, and this is very hard to transition to schools, and that's going to be a challenge, but we have to do it to be able to continue to sell our recycling. Recycling right means, number one, putting only things that are recyclable in containers. I know that sounds silly, but it's true. There's something out there called wish cycling. Wish cycling is, you know, This K-cup that I made my coffee with this morning, it looks like it should be recyclable. I'm going to throw it in the recycling container. That's wish cycling. It's very important under the Recycling Right program that only the right things go in the commingled container and only the right things go in the paper and cardboard container. If you're doing single stream, just only recyclable items are being recycled. That's the first point of Recycling Right. The second part of Recycling Right is making sure the recycling you're putting in there is clean. If you're not going to clean it, if you're not going to remove the contamination, throw it out. I know that sounds terrible for me to say. Somebody who works in environmental management, right? I'm telling you to throw out recycling. It's not a recyclable if it's not clean anymore. That's why I'm telling you that. I'd rather you cleaned it out. I'd rather that you had the time and you could go through the trouble of cleaning it. That's a challenge in schools. Think about that, because the kids aren't going to be able to go under a sink and rinse out that yogurt container. We'll talk about how's the best way to package that later. But if you're not going to clean it, so I use a peanut butter jar as an example usually. You're done with the peanut butter jar, there's peanut butter all around it, right? If you're not going to go through the trouble of running it under hot water and cleaning it out, throw it in the garbage, because that's going to contaminate the whole load. The contamination levels that are acceptable are so much lower now. So that's the Recycle Right campaign. And then if we go back to, we're talking about schools, that's another reason to keep the communication lines open with custodial staff. I'm sure most of you route your memos home electronically. I'm in the Scarsdale School District. I know I get dozens of emails a day, it seems like, from the school telling me everything that's going on there, but that's a good thing, so that the students don't have to bring these things home on paper. Virtually everybody returns their ink cartridges now. You can also, I don't know if many of you know, that you can return used markers for school and home, and there's a Crayola program that's available. Holding recycling contests, and that could be between schools in the district, it could be between classrooms to see who can recycle the most. Participating in America Recycles Day, using that as a teaching point. On the educational side, a lot of schools incorporate recycled materials into art projects. Utilize scrap paper boxes for kids so they don't have to break out new paper all the time. Teach about recycling. If it can be part of the curriculum, teaching about composting, teaching about the recycling process, which could be coordinated with a trip to the MRF or another field trip, a waste in the environment field trip. And teaching about plastics in the ocean, how the plastic that is littered or not put in the right stream and controlled can end up in our oceans and killing wildlife. The cafeteria, I would imagine, is everybody's biggest challenge here. So food preparation. And I learned this from talking with Diane Chickering, who's on our panel, from Suburban Carting. In the food prep side, usually food prep is the cleanest kind of food waste. And I know not all of you do food waste, food scrap recycling, but for those of you who do, food preparation, most people don't think of that because that's the easiest. That's supposed to be the cleanest. But there are a lot of items that end up in there that are not part of the food waste stream. Rubber bands that hold vegetables together, plastic bags that food comes in, gloves, things that are in the kitchen, and incidental prep waste, that has to be kept out of the food waste stream. There are opportunities in Westchester to donate perishable, edible food. It's called Food Rescue, and I would urge you to look into those opportunities. Most schools are now encouraging students to bring lunch in reusable containers, using reusable water bottles. Condiment packets, you can rethink the use of condiment packets, and if you are going to offer them, do it strategically. I urge you to look into starting a food scrap recycling program, and I know Ron and Diane can talk to you about that. We were talking about the organization of waste baskets. In the cafeteria, that means, setting up all your recycling in a row, so you have your paper, your commingled, but everything lined up. If you do food scraps, have garbage at the end so that the child can work their way down the line, and that whatever's left over goes in the garbage. And the most important thing, and we can go to the next screen, is signage. And that's not just for children, that's for adults too. And that signage, the most important thing about the signage is to keep it as simple as possible and to use pictures. And again, that's just as much for adults as it is for children. We've transitioned. Our recycling material used to have a lot of text on it. It's been much more successful now that we've gone to, all our material is almost all pictures now. It works a lot better. The simpler you keep recycling, studies have shown, the more people are going to recycle. The more complicated it becomes, the more you change the rules, the less people recycle. So we've transitioned to picture signage, and I would urge you to do the same. There's some great examples here. Think of whatever you can that is going to go into that container and put an example on the signage. Signage is key to the proper separation in the cafeteria and anywhere, really. There are additional opportunities that are available to schools, community involvement opportunities. You can think about doing fundraisers, maybe selling lunch packaging with the school logo or with the school's team logo, off-site school event community projects. There are a lot of resources available. Our office is a resource if you ever have any questions or need any advice. But Pepsi, on PepsiCoRecycling.com, they offer a lot of resources for schools. And of course, there are a lot of grants that are available specifically for schools to get containers, to get recycling equipment, to launch recycling programs. So NISAR is an organization that does some school-specific grant offers, but there are a lot of others. And so that's it. So that's where we are in a nutshell. As I said, our big emphasis now, not just in schools, throughout the county, is moving from recycling more to recycling right. What that means in schools, we can talk about now through your questions. I know that Karen was nice enough to send some pre-questions over to us. So maybe that's the way we can get started. I know several of you have sent questions in, and we could talk about that with the panel and then just open it up to the floor and whatever questions you have. But we had a question about what happens to our paper and our plastic after it's put in the recycling bin? What does it become after it's recycled? Westchester specific paper and plastic. Now, it's hard to track these items. Some of them are sold to recyclable brokers, and then they sell them to recyclers down the line. Others we sell directly to recyclers. But for the most part, a lot of our plastic is converted into irrigation pipe, or colored plastics. So we separate out our color and our clear PET plastic. So a lot of the color plastic becomes irrigation pipe. The clear plastic, the PET plastic, a lot of that becomes clamshells, the clamshells that are used to package takeout food or items in when you buy an item in the store or through Amazon and it's in a clamshell. So that's a lower grade plastic, and it's recycled down. Everything's recycled down into a lower grade. Same thing with paper. Paper has several grades. Office paper is the most valuable paper. A lot of that is shredded. The least valuable is gray board cardboard, so like a shoebox. So things get recycled down. A lot of items that go in our recycling bins in Westchester become brown paper towels, so that you might get in a bathroom in a school. That type of material. Or it might be recycled down into a lower grade newspaper. So everything gets recycled a grade or two down from what it was. We had a question about lids. So lids, let's talk about lids on plastic bottles first. No one believes me when I tell them this. You can put the lid back on the bottle. As long as you empty out the liquid that's in the bottle and it's relatively dry, you can put the lid back on the bottle. The other question we had was coffee cup lids, though. And that one we had to look into, I'll admit. So basically, if you're not going to clean the lid, because most of it is stained on the underside with coffee, if you're not going to clean the lid off, throw it out. If you're going to go through the trouble of cleaning it, you can recycle it. It's very hard for us to find markets to sell it. It's a very low-grade plastic, but we'll do our best, and we will take it, and we'll market it, and we will sell that material. Same thing, we were asked about salad dressing containers, the little cups where salad dressing goes into. Same thing. It's awfully hard to find markets to sell that material, but we do, so it is recyclable. But that's one that has to really be cleaned because there's a lot of, usually with salad dressing or condiments that's in it, there's a lot of oil. And it's hard to get that out, so you gotta wipe that out very good for it to be recyclable and not garbage and not to contaminate the load. We were asked about receipts, paper receipts, not recyclable. Thermal paper has chemicals all over it. That filmy material on the receipt, it's coated with chemicals. It is not a recyclable paper and should go in the garbage. Why are napkins not considered paper recycling? Well, a napkin is pretty low-grade recyclable already, but for the most part, the real reason is that it's almost always contaminated. I mean, you're either wiping your mouth or blowing your nose in it. So unless you had some pristine napkins that you needed to get rid of, I would say throw them in the garbage. Then how much contamination is too much? That's always a question I don't like to answer. So let's talk about a pizza box. So if a pizza box is stained with oil, you can pull off the part that is stained and throw that in the garbage and recycle the rest of the pizza box. And that goes for any kind of cardboard container or paper container. But if there's food in there, it's pretty much garbage. Unless you can remove the section that has the food and throw that out, I would tell you to throw the item out. If you can move it, if it's just on the bottom of a container, throw the bottom out and then recycle the lid if you'd like. But food is even worse than the oil staining. But for the most part, for items, and this is impossible to tell a child, I know that in the school, but you want to keep contamination to less than 10%. That's why I don't just give out a number, because what does that mean? I mean, so you're not going to measure the item and see what it is, so it's kind of, you're eyeballing it. But I don't want you to get into that with children. If it's contaminated, tell them to throw it out. Keep it simple with them. They're going to go home and teach their parents. So, you know, unless it's just a very little bit of contamination, I would tell them to throw the item out. And now my favorite question that we got before we move on. This is one of my favorites I've ever received, actually. The wax rind on Baby Bell cheese, somebody wrote in, asked if that was recycling. I don't know why it's specific to Baby Bell. I think it would probably be for any cheese with a wax rind. I mean, we talked about this in the office. Unless you are a skilled candle maker and wanted to keep that wax somewhere, I don't know what kind of scent it would have. But anyway, no, throw out the cheese wax in the garbage. But on that note, I'm going to, I don't know, how are we going to, we're just going to open it up to the audience? Ron?
I think so.
I'll-
Speak loudly, there's only one mic. The camera may not pick it up, so Lou,
I'll repeat the question. Yep.
Repeat the question.
Great. Hello.
On your fourth, I'm from Irvington, New York. On your fourth or fifth slide, I wasn't counting about what is accepted at the H-MRF in Valhalla. You added textiles, was it last year or
Yes.
so? I
Yes.
didn't see that on the list, so I just wanted to double check that.
Absolutely. We added textiles. Textiles are a much bigger segment, I've learned since we added textiles, a much bigger segment of the waste stream than you would imagine, only because they have so much weight. We collect textiles only at the HMRF, but there are several towns and villages throughout the county that have collection boxes. I know Scarsdale does, and Yorktown, Mamaroneck, and Yorktown actually does curbside pickup of textiles. That's fantastic. But it's a very large segment of the waste stream. So if you could pull that out, it has a lot of weight. And since we've just started doing it, we've just started getting numbers, but we'll be able to release how much we collect soon. We started it in Mario in 2018, I guess the end of 2018. So we'll have good numbers for this year to see how it worked out. But yeah, I would urge, you know, any kind of, all municipalities to offer a box. And it's actually one of the few waste streams left that you're, you know, that you can make money on as well for a municipality, because there's companies that are still buying recyclable textiles from the municipalities.
I'd like to ask about plastics, and even with next year's introduction of
Well, the question was about plastic bags, plastic film, those type of plastic items. What you said is the state law. So the large producers have to offer a mechanism for taking it back. That's why you see it at the supermarket and some of the other large retailers and distributors. So that's the mechanism New York State has set up for the collection of that material. It's not, and believe it or not, it doesn't end up in the trash. They have to demonstrate that they're sending it to a recycler. You bring up a good point. I mean, what is it made into? It's a very low-grade plastic, so it's petroleum-based. There are recyclers that do take it. We separated out at our MRF, so, and you gave me an opportunity to say, the worst thing you can do is package your recycling in plastic bags. Please don't do that. Keep them loose, because those plastic bags, Chris's, Cruz, and Diane's, they have to remove those plastic bags from the recycling. When the line goes by, it's like an old I Love Lucy episode where the chocolates are going by. They have to rip those plastics open and throw them out. So we keep the plastic bags, and when we get a big enough load, we'll make a bale and try to sell it. There's not a great market for them, but hopefully when the law kicks in, that's going to make a big difference, and there'll be less of them at least in distribution. But they are also, there are other environmental nuisance problems with those bags. As you know, they often end up in the litter and out on the streets and in trees, and eventually are going to end up in our waterways. So that's why we want to do whatever we can to, if you're not going to recycle them, throw them out, because we burn them, we use them to produce electricity. That's not the optimum use for them, but at least they're not ending up in a landfill in Westchester. But what we want to do is separate them out and recycle them.
Can I ask a follow-up to that? So you're talking about, I mean, I think you were talking about the plastic bags you get at Stop and Shop, but in your answer, I thought you were also kind of talking about the big blue plastic bags that at least our school district collects their recycling in. Are you also talking about those being a problem when the carters pick them up?
So the question was about packaging recycling in blue recycling bags, and I'm going to hand that over to Chris.
Yes, the problem is that when they come in the bags, we have to break open every single bag before we could recycle the material inside. So the best bet is to keep it loose. This way it makes it easier to recycle, because, as it's all going across the line, it comes by so fast. If we miss a bag here or there, it does end up in the trash because it'll get rejected from the machines.
And then our district could stop buying big blue plastic bags. Yeah, they're expensive.
I like the way you look at that.
Diane, is that the same on the private side?
Actually, for the commercial, because I believe she's from Amerenik Schools, and I pick up the schools. So for some commercial accounts, we are still allow a recyclable bag to be used. And that's part of the recycling for schools and restaurants. That's on a front load truck. So, yeah. So
you guys would still accept it?
Right, yeah.
So that shows you part of the problem with recycling, because you asked me the question. I'm answering from the county and the district's point of view, and for the schools that are collected by municipal haulers in the refuse district, absolutely not acceptable. That's why it's so important for the custodial staff to speak with their hauler about how it should be packaged, because Diane's suburban carting is going to go to a different final disposal site. We run our own. We know how we run it. We can't run it with plastic bags. Not only is it a nuisance to open up, but those bags get caught. We were talking about how we use automated equipment, get caught in the equipment and can jam it up and actually damage the equipment. So for us, it's a big nuisance. For others, they might go to a MRF that is all hand sort, so it's a completely different thing. And I know that's frustrating, and I just said that you have to keep recycling simple or people aren't going to do it. That's part of the problem, but that's why communication is the key. Yes?
Actually you asked to bring clean samples, but I'm curious about what is too dirty.
Okay.
So would you give me is that too dirty?
That too dirty. I don't know if we can see that.
You will pass
There's a film of cat food around inside the container, so I'm going to hand that off to Chris.
This would be considered clean enough for us. It is wiped out. This is an A. I'll give you an A.
If I may just a follow-up on that, because you talked about it.
So clean enough for Westchester,
Clean enough for Westchester,
for
yes.
Refuge One.
Now, I'm going to come back to you in 1 second. I know where this is going to lead, yogurt containers. Someone's going to ask me about yogurt containers. What do you do in school with, yogurt, pudding, anything like that? I understand that there's not going to be a sink and kids aren't going to line up and clean these items out. Best thing you can tell them to do, and it's so important on the first few days of school, if you can have parent volunteers or teacher or students who are trained in this, to show the kids, wipe it out with a napkin. If they're not going to wipe it out, that's why that item you brought was a good example. That's what it would look like wiped out with a napkin, pretty much. If you're going to wipe it out, it's fine, then throw it in the recycling. We can deal with that. But if they're not going to wipe it out, they have to throw it in the garbage. The food is the biggest contaminant. It's the most rejected contaminant. Would you agree with that? Food is probably the reason loads get rejected more than anything else. So if they can wipe it out, of course, empty out any beverage bottles. That has to be emptied out. I understand if they're having, they should probably be drinking water, but if they, or milk, I guess. But if they're not going to rinse out the container, we already have a problem if there was something other than water in there. But they have to totally empty that container out. But on the pudding, yogurt, other food containers, wipe it out with a napkin. But let's get back to your next.
Talk briefly about it, the quality of the paper. So I'm a backyard composter. This is a good source of carbon. It's a clean paper bag, but how is it more valuable as a compostable or as a recyclable?
That's a great question.
In my life, it would be more valuable as a compostable,
No, I'm happy I don't have to answer all of these.
as well as like
I mean-
thin piece of paper like this.
Whether it's more valuable or not, I mean, that's more of a open-ended question there. I mean, that would be considered a brown, and right now, Brown's cardboard is much more profitable than a newspaper.
So this is still a
So-
higher quality.
Yes, that would be a higher quality, yes, than a newspaper. It- cor- Correct.
Well, oh yeah, that's that leads to another question. The one thing I would urge though, anything that's compostable, that you can compost, I would urge you to compost it. First of all, you don't have any greenhouse gas mileage going on that. We have to ship recyclables all over the place, so the more localized you can do it, the better. And if it's something that you can add to your compost, then I urge you to do that. But this led to, so I forgot, I skipped one of the questions we received actually before the presentation. I'm not going to say what school it was, but it's, my custodian said we don't have to cover our paper and cardboard bin. That is not true at all. We just had to, because of the storms we had earlier this week, unfortunately, we had to separate out a significant portion of the cardboard and paper we received from some villages because people put it out the night before, and it was mush. I mean, generally, we would never we recycle, we'll sell it as the lowest grade. This wasn't even paper. It was just slop. So because of that, we had to, and it was very labor intensive, separate out the wet cardboard, the wet newspaper. And I know some wet, I understand, but this was, drenched. So yes, you have to cover your cardboard and paper container. But guess what? They have to cover their commingled containers too, because that when it rains, it gets into the bottles and the containers. Because it's going to just roll down in the container. Also, the other reason you want to cover it is for leachate. So when the water goes through a roll-off container in the back, those aren't airtight, those aren't sealed containers. So that's going to pick up all sorts of material and then run down the roadway, and past the bus and down and into our waterways. So you want to cover all your containers, garbage, and any recycling container should be covered at the school or anywhere. Yes.
I have a question about the non-dairy milk containers. They come in like a carton that would be recyclable, but they have like that little plastic top, the screw top. So I've been recycling it with my commingled.
And do you leave the top on?
Do you leave the top on? What do you do?
Yeah, I believe you can leave them on.
Yes,
Right. You leave them on, yes.
Not necessarily like screw it on, but like there's part
I understand. Yep. Yeah, like a half and half, yep. And they have the little pull tab usually, yeah. I gotta go to this side.
Excuse me, even if those cartons are lined with plastic, you know, those UHT soups and milks and things, they have the plastic top, but even if they have plastic lining, which milk cartons don't have, it's still okay to put them with the commingles?
W-
Those little Tetra packs?
Yes, we accept that,
Okay, thank you.
yes.
Related to that, is that also the case with suburban cartons?
They do not do cartons.
For the schools, no, we do not do aseptic containers anymore. At one time, we did with our single stream, but no.
Wait, so what are
Wax, milk cartons, aseptic containers.
Put those in a recycling every day, and we taught the kids to do it.
Yeah. I would recommend Mamaroneck School use clear bags so that we can, instead of dark blue bags for the recycling. Or no bag, it's just where we bring Mamaroneck Recycling, it's easier for us to pull out the bag from the cardboard, because we also recycle the cardboard and the paper at the same facility. We have a conveyor belt that goes up, so, yeah. I probably have that.
And again, I know that's confusing. The county added carton recycling in, I want to say 2016, around, so we rolled out carton, we added cartons to our commingled recycling. We rolled it out in 2016. We worked with the Carton Council, and we had a series of PSAs and asking everybody to include it in their recycling. I know at home they might not see that photo, but we're going to share this. But all those cartons and those types of cartons are acceptable within the refuse district. So if the school is collected by a municipal sanitation department, they would all be included in the commingled recycling. Again, it's important to know who your hauler is and what they accept. Yes, I didn't come on this side yet.
Hi. I was curious about what's the most valuable, like are 1 and 2 plastics the most valuable? And I'm also curious about aluminum, because I thought that aluminum was maybe some of the most valuable.
Aluminum's recyclable, yes. But I'm gonna let Chris answer that question. The question was, what are the most valuable recyclables or easiest to market on plastic side and on the metal side?
Yes, on the metal side, aluminum definitely is the most valuable, and then.
the most contaminated.
Well, I was talking, just correct, he actually corrected me. So, yes, aluminum cans are the most valuable. Aluminum foil is not. That's more of a lower grade.
Aluminum foil. And you make like a really big ball of it. Is that better than just putting a little piece of aluminum foil in?
I mean, it all runs through the machine, so it runs by a machine called an eddy current, so it pushes anything that's non-ferrous away. So whether it's a big ball or a small piece, it will get pushed away, yes. And then, exactly. And then on the plastic side, the number one, your milk jugs are the most valuable. Then behind that is the number 2, which is which of course only 1, 2, is the colors, which is your laundry detergents, things of that nature.
When you say 1 and 2, are you referring to the number?
That's correct. That's what's so.
And if there's no number,
Throw it out. Yes.
and same with plastic lining? Like, you know, plastic lining or film, what we were talking about
Yes,
before?
I mean,
Like, it'll have it on there if it's considered plastic lining, but like I've been told bread bags, for example, would always be considered plastic lining, but it doesn't always have the number.
Exactly. I mean, we'll do our best to recycle it, but a lot of the times, no number, it ends up being garbage.
Yes.
I'm a student at Mamaroneck High School, and I know that suburban carting is our hauler, and we were just wondering if our recycling is very contaminated and kind of like how we are doing in that aspect.
Great question. So the question was from a student at Mamaroneck Schools asking about how they're doing with contamination in their recycling.
Okay, so we pick up the containers at Mamaroneck School as single stream, and that's the cardboard and the plastic bottles and cans together, and the plastic bottles and cans is in the blue bag. So picking it up on a front load route, that's why I kind of said don't try not to use plastic bags if you can't, because then we could see a little bit more. But if it were contaminated, my driver would leave an OOP sticker. So if there was any textile recycling or any materials in there or a bag of garbage, we would not pick it up. We would leave an OOP sticker and we would not pick up that recycling container. So, and I would get copied on that and I would know. So no, we do not have a problem with Mamaroneck schools.
Who's next? Yes.
So I was wondering, with regards to aluminum, there are yogurts that have a thicker, kind of like, looks like aluminum tops, like total. And, I wash it off and I put it in recycling. Is that correct?
Yes, that will get recycled,
And
yes.
also, it's on like on fruit cups at schools, I noticed, the hard ones.
Correct, as long as it goes in, like I said, the aluminum's the easiest to recycle actually because it all goes over the machine and it just shoots out all the aluminum.
The thin ones from the yogurts, that's not recyclable. It's like a little thin
Well-
film. That's plastic, right? It looks like metal a little bit, but I just want to double check.
If it's metal, it's recyclable. If it's plastic,
Okay, that's what I thought. But
most likely not.
okay, thank you.
Yes, right in front.
Yeah, so the numbers 1 through 7 in their little circles, little arrow circles, are considered recyclable. Our village says they're recyclable, and then I read in various places that, well, you really should know, do only 2 and 5.
That's a very good question to bring up. So in Westchester, it is the law to recycle plastics 1 through 7. So that's the law. Are we having, as I said earlier, we have still been able to recycle everything left curbside. It's a challenge under today's market, but we still do 1 through 7s. What you're reading about, there are many jurisdictions throughout the country that have scaled back, that are telling their residents, like you said, only do 1s and 2s or something like that. There are some that are practicing what's called aspirational recycling, so that they are still having their residents and their schools separate everything out, so they stay in the habit, so that when they start recycling again, they won't have to relaunch the program, but they're throwing it all out. We're not doing that. Right now, we are recycling everything left curbside. I hope to be able to tell you that next year, that we're still recycling everything curbside. We're making a lot less money selling recycling. Recycling revenue was down 30% last year, another 25% this year. So some things we're giving away, or if there are really non-valuable recyclable items, we're telling brokers that, well, if you want our good recycling, you have to take our less valuable recycling. So we're trying to be creative to get rid of everything, but we're getting rid of everything. That's not the case. So what you're hearing about is right, but not in Westchester. Westchester's recycling everything. In the back?
A plastic tennis ball can that has metal rim on the top.
Okay, for those on the tennis team at the schools?
I would say yes, it's recyclable. The rim is so small that it should be fine.
In the back?
I have 2 questions. In Larchmont, where we live, there's 2 things I noticed. One, I've never seen an OOP sticker. I don't know when you guys decide that a community needs to be kind of looked over, but I know our community could really use someone going around and reminding people what goes in. But the other is, on recycling day, there's quite a few people I've seen going around our neighborhood collecting everything out of the recycling bins early in the very early morning. And I'm wondering, does that, I realize that these people probably need money, that's why they're doing it, but it does seem like they're taking revenue away from the recycling program.
So there's a couple of questions. The first one is about lack of OOP stickers in certain villages. Let me I didn't go through this too carefully earlier. The county does not do any collection. So we manage the processing of recyclables, recyclable programs, environmental management programs, and the disposal of garbage. We don't do any collection. The collection's all either the responsibility of the municipality, and there are actually a handful of municipalities up north that the residents have to contract directly with the hauler to handle their own recycling and garbage. So we meet sanitation departments. We meet with their four persons. We meet with their commissioners, their supervisors, and we recommend the use of OOP stickers in residential situations when residences are not recycling, but we can't force them. It's really up to the municipality whether or not that's the way they want to go about their collection. They have to manage their own collection. The other question was about, I'm sorry, just remind me. Oh, it is actually, there is actually, under county law, it is illegal to take recycling, to steal recycling, but, you know, I don't know that it's really enforced against people who are walking around picking up cans and bottles and things like that for redemption. I would imagine those items are getting recycled. Does it take money away from the county? Perhaps. But that statute was really put in place because about 8 years ago, the recycling market was through the roof, and cardboard was like gold for recyclers. And rogue trucks were going through the towns, stealing everybody's cardboard. So that was a more organized crime of recycling. So that statute was put in place to crack down on that, and not really. I don't think it was ever used for the the single peddler going through and picking up recycling.
Yeah, on the same topic, does the county of Camaro separate redemption cans and bottles? Or are they just recycled?
No, they're just recycled. We did have a program with for many years with WARC, Arc of Westchester, where we gave them, we sold them at a reduced price, a certain amount of bottles and cans, and their clients separated them out for the enhanced redemption if you separate it out by manufacturer. But they no longer, they've moved on to different programs, so we don't do that with the materials recycled, though.
Would the county even consider such an operation, let's say at your Playland, open house coming up in November, or at the other MERV fest, H-MERV?
I don't know historically why that wasn't the case. I don't know if you know, Chris.
So bottle redemption requires a different type of license for the state of New York, so that'd probably be the reason why the county hasn't gotten involved with it.
Yeah, I don't think we would be allowed to do it on a large scale. I don't think a municipality would be allowed to do it. But I'd have to look at that to get back to you on that.
In other states going on the same thing, they've put redemption centers, the
Mhm.
containers where you don't go to the supermarket, et cetera. They're
Yeah.
redemption area. We don't
Yeah, we have
have
that.
that at all in New York, in lower New York State, to my knowledge. And it's something that I know in my neighborhood, unfortunately, a lot of redemption bottles, it's easier to throw them in the recycling than it is to go home to the supermarket and wait long.
Well, I can tell you that DEF and the county and some of the large waste trade organizations like SWANA, the Solid Waste Association of North America, and NYSSWAM, and some of the others have all been petitioning the state to expand the bottle bill, to increase recycling, and to take the pressure off the MRFs so they can continue recycling as well, to expand it to sports drinks, and to expand it to include spirits and wine and things like that. And we've been a big proponent of that, and we've been pushing for that. So we have been pushing for an expansion of the bottle bill.
3 items. First, the stickers on cans and the peanut butter jar.
Mhm.
We bothered to clean out the peanut butter jar. Do we have to take that sticker off of the plastic or glass peanut butter jar?
So let's take that one first. The question was removing labels from bottles and containers. I would love you to do that, but we all only have so much time in the day. So, to sit around peeling our cans and bottles would be, first of all, I think it would turn a lot of people off from recycling if we told them they had to do that. Does it help with contamination? Absolutely. The less contamination, the better. So if you can do it or it's easily removable, like a soda bottle, it's pretty easy to take off. or a Gatorade bottle or something like that. But do you have to take them off? No, we've calculated that in, and the markets we sell to also understand that it's going to be almost impossible to get people. It's not like we're falling behind. It's not like Westchester's not pulling off the labels, but, you know, Newark is, and we're going to lose out selling it. Most people do not remove those labels, and we're okay. I know you had another question.
Yeah, number 2 out of 3. How about tape on cardboard boxes? Do we have to strip the tape and the labels?
You should. I mean, again, a lot of tape comes off easy. Usually the tape that's holding the box together comes off a lot easier than the label. It just starts tearing the thing apart when you pull the label off. So whatever excess tape you can pull off, the better. You don't have to, it doesn't have to be pristine, but whatever, you know, if there's pieces hanging off, by all means, please tear them off and throw out the tape.
Well, we do the best we can.
Right, do the best you can.
Same sort of thing. You'll take it with tape and labels, but if we can get it off and make it cleaner, it's better.
Absolutely.
Okay, last question, I promise. Workbooks and test prep books and paperback books that the libraries don't want anymore. These are becoming more of an issue because the libraries aren't taking books anymore, both paperback and hard copies. So what do we do with
So-
unwanted?
So the question was about books and recycling?
All right, so paperback books, those are recyclable. The hardcover books, sadly, are not. The reason being is because you're dealing with 2 grades in one. Basically, you have a cardboard kind of on the cover, and you got paper in between. So that is not recyclable because we have to separate both.
And what if they remove the cover?
If they remove the cover, yes, it is recyclable.
The paper.
Yes, the paper in between. I believe you got
Yeah, and the cover would go in the garbage.
correct.
Right in front.
Curious about the business side of it. Does the MRF operate at a profit that they're able to absorb the 30% decrease in sale of the recycling? Or is that going to be the tipping fees that the municipality has?
That's a great question. So sometimes the MRF operates at a profit. Right now, what I would say is the $3.5 million we're going to make selling recycling this year, that doesn't pay for the county's entire recycling program. But if you take into consideration the avoidance cost and what it would cost us to get rid of that material, those 70,000 tons as garbage, well, then it more than pays for itself. So yes, with the avoided cost, I say recycling is, I don't know if the word is profitable, but it makes financial sense.
At what point does the recyclable become more valuable to burn it than it is to try to sell it?
From an environmental standpoint, probably never. From a financial standpoint, I don't know. I don't know what the break-even point would be or where we would turn the corner. But remember, it's a cyclical market. So even if it hit that point, I mean, my argument would be we need to take the loss because recycling, for the environmental benefit for that short-term dip is going to outweigh whatever we're going to gain from doing that. Now, remember,
Municipalities obviously have made that decision otherwise, right?
other municipalities outside of Westchester County, correct. Yeah, they've made that cost-benefit analysis, and they've decided not to do that, correct. Yes?
In the schools for drinks, when children have excess liquid, we ask them to pour it out, and then they put their container in recycling. They're not rinsing it. Is that an issue?
Well, yeah, I touched on that earlier. I know they're not going to have the opportunity in most schools to rinse it out. So as long as they empty out the container, yeah, at home I would ask you to rinse it out. And I know that, again, tells the kid to go home and just empty it out, but there's really nothing we can do. I want them to learn to recycle. So, yeah, if they empty it out, we'll sell it, yes.
Can the yogurt, drinkable drinks that they bring in also fall into that category? I mean, it's mostly
Yeah, there's going to be more contamination in there, but they got to really get that material out of it. Yes, I would tell them to include that with their recycling, unless anybody disagrees.
As long as it's numbered, one.
Right.
two. Well,
You had a question?
I teach biology, and I'm wondering about chemical bottles.
Yeah.
That can go to the, that should go to the hazardous waste facility because of the residue that's inside the bottle.
What kind of
And they'll handle that.
We normally don't accept from schools at the HMRF, but Mario is correct. We've made exceptions for lab departments and schools, and we've worked with them to, with our vendor who handles those materials, so that they're just, I'd much rather see them disposed of properly, because once they have the chemicals in them, they may not, it might not be proper to burn them at the waste to energy facilities, so, and they might not, they're probably not ripe for recycling. So if you have items like that at a school, you can contact us, and we would work with you and our vendor on a way to get rid of that.
I just have a question for Suburban about what areas you do single stream. So some places you do single stream and some places you have dual streams?
The question was for Suburban Carting and where they do single stream.
Okay, so Suburban picks up 5 municipalities, which used to be single stream. We also pick up larger commercial accounts in Westchester County, and we pick up small commercial accounts. We do not do like residential curbside unless it's in one of those municipalities that I service, like Lou had pointed out, the northern Westchester municipalities. So we make a determination based on if the customer can have enough containers out there for the separation of the three, the trash, the plastic bottles and cans, and the paper and cardboard. In this particular situation, Mamaroneck schools does not have enough room for 3 containers. And I think that's, I've been servicing that school for a very long time. The bid is about every 4 or 5 years. So I kind of know a lot of the history of Mamaroneck school, and I've preached food compost in that school like almost 10 years ago. So the bid comes out with the single stream in it. So then as a carting company bidding on it, I'm just going to give them their number for that. So some of that has to be in the bid, like the food compost should be in the bid, but that comes from the school district. So I'm just following what they want. I do have some small commercial accounts that that also do not have room for 3 containers. So that's where we put the single stream. But, we are different from the county because we are a private hauler and we do own a recycling facility. So we can alter what we need to alter based on what our accounts are. So we do not prefer the single stream, I don't know, again, it's different for a private hauler, but we used to get $30 a ton rebate on plastic bottles and cans, and now we're paying $65, $70 a ton for it. So it's a big deal for a business. But again, we're a private hauler and the county's different.
I thank you for that, because that really illustrates, the difference between dual stream and single stream, and a lot of those jurisdictions that have halted their programs are almost all single stream programs.
Right,
So.
I'm sorry, can I just add something? I'm sorry, because I was on my mind with your first question. Because I am the recycling coordinator for the company, because single stream is not beneficial, I actually moved 3 municipalities back to separating it at the beginning of this year. And we did it through the UP stickers. That was a really big part of, not picking it up at curbside, because if you leave it there, the resident's going to get it, right? And it's the same in the schools and the commercial accounts. If you use the UP sticker, and I took that idea from the county, 15 years ago, because it works well. But yeah, we changed the municipalities for that reason. It's not beneficial for single stream for us anymore, based on what's happening.
And not to inform on your school, but if you have any questions about what's going on at your school, or if you want an inspection, or not for a fine or a violation, but an inspection for us to tell you if they're doing it properly, you can arrange all of that through Melissa and her department. She oversees our recycling enforcement.
It's really kind of along those lines. I was curious about if it's possible to find out your recycling rate, either for your school or for your town.
That's a very good question. Yes. So let me explain how that works in the district. In the solid waste district, the municipalities, there's a built-in incentive to recycle. All the municipalities pay the county, now it's $29.30, I think. $29.30 a ton to get rid of garbage. The county pays a lot more than that to get rid of it. But the municipality pays $29.30. They pay nothing to recycle. Recycling's free for any municipality in the district. So there's a built-in incentive to increase recycling, reduce waste. We pay a lot more than that to get rid of the garbage at the waste-to-energy facility. How does that made up? Every resident of the district pays a very small ad valorem tax. You probably don't even realize it. Some municipalities don't even break it out, your solid waste tax. But the residents of the district pay a small ad valorem tax based on the FEV, the fair equalized value of their household. So based on the value of your home in the district, you pay a very small tax. That tax is, I believe it's lower today than it was in 2004 because of the reduction in waste that we've been able to achieve. So there was somebody that asked earlier about recycling revenue. Recycling revenue is nice, it helps. I mean, it's over $3 million this year, but really that reduction in waste saves a lot of money and is the engine that keeps these programs running.
I can answer about the weight. When you have a container, like Mamaroneck Schools, for example, they have a 6-yard and an 8-yard container. You would take the frequency of the container and then times the weight per yard in the container. And what our trucks do is we'll randomly weigh containers. So we'll come up with a figure to give the schools how much they're, at the end of the year, how much they've removed in trash and how much they've removed in weight by recycling. So yeah, I mean, I have a lot of commercial accounts that request that in schools. And in fact, Mamaroneck Schools will be switching with the food compost, and they're going to be reducing their garbage pickup frequency. So it's trackable. Yeah, and when there's progress, when you decrease the frequency of trash pickup, it shows the progress of diverting it over to the food waste. Yes, yes, yes. And tracking it is key. It's the most important thing. Yeah. Well, in a commercial, only because.
Absolutely, yes. Every municipality in the county, since we're the planning unit, we have to track their disposal rates in all different materials, where it's going, to make sure that it's being disposed of properly, and we report that to New York State. So I know some of you still had questions left, but we're way over our time limit, but we're welcome, we're happy to stay and answer any questions afterward that anybody might have. I just want to thank FCW, Sustainable Westchester, of course, Nancy Seligson and her staff, and Karen Kaur, and Ron Schulhoff, and everybody helped put this together. Thank you all very much.
Before everyone leaves, just a couple of quick announcements, and we also have to give them a big thanks. This is the first of 3 of these roundtables. 2 more are scheduled, so if you still have questions, even after you stay a little bit later, or please help spread the word. This is a fantastic turnout. The more people that understand this information, the more people that we can help our schools. Melissa pointed out that they have recycling guides that are available in the back, so please pick some up and bring some to your schools. The dates and times for the next 2 roundtables are Thursday, November 21st, 10 to 11:30 a.m. at the Westchester County MRF at Stu Leonard Drive, Yonkers, New York. So if you haven't been there, it's a great place to be. I highly recommend you take this opportunity to go there. The third roundtable is Tuesday, November 26th, 10 to 11:30, also at the Westchester County MRF on Stu Leonard's Drive. All that information is available on the Federated Conservationists of Westchester County website. Just like to thank the town of Mamaroneck for hosting, recognize Assemblyman Steve Otis, who is here, take the time to come. And just a couple things. We heard a lot about recycling, and some ancillary questions came up, things about tennis ball containers or yogurt cups. And this was a really focus on paper and commingled, but there's a lot happening in Westchester around all kinds of recycling. So a lot of you have food scrap recycling programs. One of the beauties is it helps this program, because now you have a place to put that yogurt and an opportunity to educate, not just let's throw out yogurt for the recycling, but let's food scrap recycle it, and it also helps the recycling program. So it's a great win-win for all recycling. In Scarsdale, I heard about tennis balls. We are now recycling the tennis balls. There's a company that takes them and grinds them up and puts them and makes new courts with them. So there's a lot of things that others are doing, and we should all talk with each other. Monica has a sign-in sheet. She's going to circulate everybody's information. So if you hear something that's happening at another school, let's reach out to each other. There's nothing like being able to take an administration to a school that's already doing a program and show, here it is, look how well it works. Here's the bin setup that Lou mentioned, 3 next to each other of different colors. And then just lastly, something that I took away from this, and this goes to our thank you to not just the panels for being here, but for all the work that they're doing. We hear about other municipalities around the country where recycling is not going as well as it could be. And in Westchester, you heard it, we're still recycling everything here. That is a testament to the work that they're doing at the DEF, at the county, not just now when it happened, when China closed its doors, but for years being proactive and always thinking about how can we have the best recycling, how can we have the most products get recycled. So we should be thanking them not just for being here today, but for all their work for making Westchester a leader in recycling, and everything we do supports, we know that the county is there getting it recycled. So everything we do, we can feel proud of. So a big thank you for all the work. Thank everybody for being here, and those that will be watching at home, please help spread the word about the other roundtables. Thank you.